Gamonad, we are back on the pipeline. It is Thursday, at least the day that we're recording, and we have an awesome guest, TH Thursday. I feel like there's something to click on there. Maybe it's just early in the morning and my brain hasn't fully booted up yet. We're also joined by Kevin, trusty co-host from the Monad side, but most importantly, TH from Kizzy. Thank you for joining us. Really excited to chat today.
Thank you for having me and excited to share a little bit more about what we're building and my story into Web3.
Awesome. Well, I know the Monad community, probably 95 plus percent of them are very familiar with Kizzy, but for anyone who's somehow not, or anyone who's tuning in from different corners of the crypto sphere or beyond, can you give us a little bit of a product rundown? What is Kizzy?
Yeah, so Kizzy at its simplest form is social media betting. And what that means is the ability for a user or customer to bet on their favorite influencer creator. And the way that we've designed the markets has actually taken a lot of inspiration from sports betting, where on sports, you're betting on the performance of athletes or sports teams. On Kizzy, you're betting on the performance of creators and influencers. And so, how many views is Donald Trump going to get on his next tweet? That's a bet that you can actually make on Kizzy on the app, and based on the popularity of that tweet, you'll actually get paid out a certain amount of money. And so that's really what we're looking to do is build social media betting and just take a lot of inspiration from sports betting.
Super cool. I mean, over the past 10, maybe even closer to 20 years now, there's just been this incredible rise of content creators, social media influencers across all verticals. And every time a new product comes around that more deeply engages the community, more deeply engages the viewer base, that kind of like brings social media to the next level. So, really excited about what you're working on here. Where did the initial inspiration to build this come from?
Yeah, so one, like, totally agree with the point that social media is becoming big, and it's only the last 20 years where we've seen the advent of social media. And then I think actually really in the last five, we've seen the explosion. Like TikTok was released a couple of years ago, but scaled to 1.5 billion users in a matter of years. And so for us, like when we look at social media betting, we're we're building on this like next generation of the attention economy, and sports has been around for generations and centuries. Sports betting was a creation on top of sports. Social media is so new. And for us, we actually think that speculation could be a far more exciting and enjoyable market for the people that consume social media. Where the idea came from was twofold. Like one, our team like skews a little bit on the younger generation, and so we're really ingrained in some of these like more memetic, like social media applications. Like I was a content creator for some time, and really enjoyed it. And so we just saw the direction the world was heading just in terms of social media. But second, and I think this is something that we can give a lot of credit to Frentech, was when Frentech launched, it was this really novel concept of just being able to effectively bet on how popular you think someone is. Obviously we know where Frentech ended up today, but the unlock for us was people actually had a lot of excitement when it came to buying and trading keys or shares on the application. Frentech tried to do something a little bit different where they had these chat rooms that acted as some of the utility for buying and selling the keys. We actually thought the financialization and marketplace aspect was far stronger, and so that's really where we set out to build Kizzy, was fully focusing on that financialization. And I think that's where we've landed with social media betting. And so it's just a combination of how popular social media has become with just what we saw and the excitement of Frentech.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a huge market opportunity. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, sports betting's been around for quite a while, but from a regulatory perspective, it was a gray area at best, right? Like, you know, the latter half of the 20th century was, basically like going to some guy on the street corner and, giving him some money and hoping that your bet plays out, and then you do the whole payout process with this like random, often quite sketchy individual. And then you've got, a bit of more light at the tunnel in terms of like regulation, allowing like DraftKings to come in, and all these other sports betting apps, which just made it so much more accessible for the common person to get involved in sports betting. Obviously, casinos as well. And the amount of user growth that led to was just absolutely insane. Thinking back to my own college days and just seeing all my buddies like gathered around a TV on Sunday, watching American football, betting on the games, like the accessibility of opportunities like this is really fundamental to user growth. And I think it's definitely the early innings for bringing something like this to social media. But in sports betting, you've got the infamous Vegas, and the lines that are often scary accurate coming out of Vegas. How do you measure the potential for a creator or the opportunity for a creator when it comes to Kizzy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll so the way that we look at like adding creators or markets on a Kizzy is a concept of like who actually brings the most customers or excitement from an influencer perspective. And so what we look at a lot is tribalism and fandom. And so where that exists today is like you have the brain rot streamers of like Kaisana, Aiden Ross, Speed. Like they have massive fan bases that eat up and consume every single piece of content that they produce, all the way from Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Kick. And so those are actually some of the most popular markets on Kizzy today. But that tribalism and fandom exists in so many different other cohorts of like social media. You have the tech sphere. MKBHD is like the world's biggest like tech YouTuber creator. He has a lot of people that consume all his content, and so that's a market that we have on the app. You then have U.S. elections, which has probably the most tribalism I've ever seen for kind of certain individuals. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are some of the most popular markets on Kizzy. And then obviously you have just the mega creators and influencers. So like Elon Musk, probably one of the most followed people on Twitter. His tweets probably hit every single person, like active users person's timeline. Again, like these are markets that have a high level of like popularity from a wide range of users, and those are the direction of markets that we want to support. And so let's say we add something like basketball onto the application, we would pick the biggest basketball players with the most influence to come on and offer those markets to users. We don't really look at like you don't have markets or sports betting for middle school or high school like games. You only have it for college and the nationals and the big world leagues. And so that's the same way that we look at in terms of just adding creators and influencers on a Kizzy. Like we want to get the biggest and the best and the most popular.
So you guys sit at this really interesting intersection. Um, there's, I'll name four verticals that I think all increase over the next 5 years. I think crypto becomes more prominent, social media becomes more prominent, prediction markets specifically, and online gambling slash betting. Few tailwinds for you there if that turns out to be true. Um, which, yeah, I guess which of those four do you think is kind of most crucial to Kizzy's success? Or like, I'm assuming there was kind of one or two core ideas that you're like, all right, this is going to increase a lot, and I want to position Kizzy to take advantage of this and become a market leader. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
which
so I agree with you. The two most critical for Kizzy is social media and betting or gambling, especially online gambling and betting. And people don't understand the kind of size of social media. YouTube today has 2.5 billion monthly active users. Instagram has close to 2. Like TikTok has 1.3 or 1.4. Twitter also has like a couple hundred million. These are just users across the world like using these applications. The sheer number is insane to just think about. Like where you have a portion of the world using these applications from these companies. And so in our eyes, like when we look at what we can do different or new in this space, it's super important that betting also is an increasingly popular activity that people want to do. Social media is already increasing. There's huge tailwinds for that. But betting on top of social media is like a level removed from what people are used to today. And so as social media gets more popular, our belief and thesis is that people are going to want to speculate and use that knowledge and this feeling of tribalism or fandom to make money on top of their hobby or their interest. At the end of the day, what we're doing is giving way for people to make money on top of their hobby or interest. For us to be able to really succeed in that, social media has to continue growing, and so does the like ability for people to gamble and bet online.
So gambling, betting online. I mean, we've seen prediction markets in general, right? Polymarket is crushing right now. This is, I don't know when the podcast gets released, but this is Halloween. So 6 days before the US election. No one thought Polymarket would be as big as it is right now, right? There's like $2 or $3 billion currently in open interest on this election. And I think it's the first time outside of sports betting that betting on something else has actually become very prominent. Elon Musk is like retweeting, quote tweeting Polymarket stats all day long right now. People are kind of just understanding that this is a thing that you can do. And you really do need crypto to power it, right? You need like a censorship resistant platform to allow these things to settle, to make sure that you're going to get paid out the funds that you deserve. So yeah, I mean, I am very excited for what other areas kind of get disrupted on the prediction market side. I think sports betting actually probably moves on chain at some point for the same characteristics. Yeah, maybe something cool to talk about would be like, where do you think social media goes in the next 5 years? Do you think it looks like a slightly more intense version of what it currently is, or something completely different? Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it'll so we see trends in social media, and all the social media platforms tend to follow that. Like one I can talk a little bit about was like Clubhouse, if you all remember that. It was just
Mhm.
like a Twitter Spaces version on an application. But as soon as that was released, all the social media platforms moved to it because it was a novel concept to like connect and share and really understand and look at different people around you. Short form video content was unlocked from TikTok, especially with the For You page, which gave people a feed where they didn't actually get content that they subscribed to. And so they actually removed the main portion of the app from a subscription model to a prediction model, and they were just trying to predict what content you would enjoy. All the top social media platforms, like Reels, you have YouTube Shorts, they'll all do that. I think there's going to be an unlock in terms of a type of content that people want to enjoy and participate in. And I don't know if that's going to be a new social media company that pioneers it, or will it be something that like one of the kind of incumbents build and put out themselves. I think when I look at social media, it's just the trends are continuing to go up and to the right. You have 77% of Gen Z using social media every single day. When you look around to the younger generation in middle school and high school across, I mean, most of my kind of anecdotal evidence is from my own upbringing, which is in the US. Like all of them are addicted to their phones and using social media. TikTok has now added a like education feed where you can now just like get education content given to you. And then on top of that, phones are becoming a kind of necessity in everyday life. And these social media platforms or applications fully exist on the mobile experience for users. And so people are spending more time online. I think social media may evolve in terms of how people look at content, but I don't think it's ever going to go away in terms of like what people are looking at, or actually it's going to increase in terms of how much people spend time on social media.
Any thoughts on AR and VR, and if they play a role in social media in the next 5 years is a pretty long time, but it's still
No,
pretty
and
nascent technology. So
yeah, I had a VR set up like a couple years ago, and it was just like too hard to set up. It was too many wires. Like didn't like my head hurt after an hour of using it. Apple tried to like, the Vision Pro was a huge thing. Like you had everyone like wanting to have one, but ended up being like not really catching on. Um, just way too early to see any kind of meaningful push from like the consumer perspective, but I think it'll have its like iPhone moment where a company figures out the best form function to provide that in a way to like make it easy for people to use, and then we'll start to see a push from like all app creators and builders into that area. But too
I
early.
think
I think you agree there too.
I think I mean, at least personally, I'm so like long-term bullish on AR in particular because you're just taking a device that people are already on all day, and every generation of like new technology makes the experience more immersive, like more like a strong hook to capture your attention. I think an interesting thing that we're seeing with AR is like as the models improve, you've got storefronts or online stores really like enabling people to try on clothing in AR, whether that's like sunglasses or a pair of shoes or shirts or a dress. And even in like the past 2 years, this has improved to the point where it's actually usable. So many products on Amazon will offer this. You've got like, the direct link with social media to Instagram or TikTok where people see an ideal of something that they want to be. They see, wow, I would look great with that pair of shoes on. Let's like go to the website, and then when you go to the website, like you have AR, just like the ability to see it on your feet. And what that does for the consumer journey is really interesting because it in a sense makes you feel like you already have that product, you already own that product. It's almost tangible. All you have to do is like go through a very simple checkout. So I think as the quality of augmented reality continues to improve, there's going to be numerous applications for it. And I think it'll be interesting as well to see how AI evolves in its own lane, right? Like the ability to have a totally non human, not real creator or influencer that accumulates a massive audience on socials and then is able to monetize via different products, whether it's wearables or games or other things along those lines. So personally, super excited about the AR and the AI side of things and how that's going to impact social media. I think some concerns about increasing or decreasing rather people's attention spans, and really just like diving into like the whole brain rot side of things. But it'll be interesting nonetheless to see how it plays out.
I think there are like some really cool use cases that use some of those that you mentioned. The AI influencer actually, I think there's a couple companies that have a few million followers on YouTube or Instagram that are fully AI, and they actually have like legit sponsors from companies, which is pretty cool. Um, I also like agree that it's going to be some really great things that come out of it. It's just I've like tried some of the products. It just seems a little bit too early to get like widespread adoption, but it's a complex problem to solve, and you're messing with the human head and brain. And so I think eventually there's going to be a few unlocks that just make it far easier for a lot of people to use.
Well, it's also hard to do, right? Like, it's pretty early stage in terms of the ability to truly create a convincing AI character that really looks and feels and sounds like an actual human being. But once that's more accessible, anyone could theoretically create their own character with very low lift on the technical side of things. So I think that will be very exciting to see how that plays out. Lot of it's like a totally brand new market for content creators, so that will be definitely interesting. I think the music side of things is interesting as well, how the rise of TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts in particular have affected the music industry, because it used to be that an artist would typically work on an album, right? You work for maybe 6 months, a year, maybe more on an album. You've got maybe around an hour of audio content. You publish that, you look to distribute in physical stores initially, and then other markets in more recent years like iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, things like that, where the focus was on creating like a large product, spending a lot of time on it, and then using that product to sell out a live tour. The live tour piece is still very much in play, but in terms of the actual content that's being produced, it's totally optimized now for 30 to 60-second audio clips that go viral on Instagram, that go viral on TikTok. And if you look at, booking, the booking side of the music industry, like who is going to sell out a nightclub, it's much less about the quality of, an hour-long album that's really polished and really well packaged, and it's more about who can capture attention on social media for 30 to 60 seconds, who's creating a song that millions of other people are going to use in their content. And that's the signal that a lot of agents and booking managers are looking for, because they know that will drive ticket sales IRL. So it's totally been this fundamental shift of what content works in the music industry, simply based on the audience attention flocking towards shorter form content on social media. So that's
I mean,
just,
dude, look at
another area.
look at someone like Tuah, like legitimately a 10-second clip that just like caught a vein on the internet because people started memeing it. Now she has a podcast. She's like extremely famous, like monetizing it to a large extent. It's crazy.
I if I was betting on that on Kizzy, there's no way I would have ever longed Tuah. I would have been like, this is over in a week.
Yeah, this thing has no staying power. Yeah, 100%. And then we would have got blown out by anyone who long talked to and then they would be making memes about it. Here's maybe one interesting question, TH, is like, say it's a year from now and Kizzy has taken over social media. It's extremely important. Everyone knows about it. It's like TikTok's viral growth. Like most people on social media use Kizzy, right? Great future. Does it change the dynamics of social media at all? Like, do people change who they listen to depending on what bets they're placing? Or is there anything like that?
Yeah. It 100% does change, and it exists for sports today. Like if you have money on a game, you are far more emotionally invested, and especially like I think UFC fighting or just MMA in general, like it's 1v1 and you're coming down to like the wire in terms of scoring or like how people perform. And so if I have like $1,000 on like a specific creator or influencer and they don't like live up or, do something that makes me lose my $1,000 that I didn't think was gonna happen, then I would be feeling some type of way. I'd go to social media or tell my friends, just like, you have those similar emotional experiences that occur. And so it already exists today. Like people are playing Kizzy right now and they're in the chat when they're talking about their strategy. They're like, oh shit, like this person, like Donald Trump's getting around a few million. So he's getting between 3 and like 20 million views a post, but it's election season. And so you'd expect that a lot of his posts would, be bangers that he was saving for a week before the election. But if he's not posting that, then, and they're not getting that much views, you're just like, you kind of feel like some sort of way you had assumption or you had assumption or prediction about how you think it's going to do. If it didn't go your way, like it's going to change how you look at the markets.
Yeah, I found myself, I mean, maybe in the last year or so, started sports betting. I want to say like Thanksgiving of last year. Like I went home and all my buddies were like placing bets on NFL games. I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever. I'll do it and join in. It is actually addicting. Like there's those disclaimers, right? They're like, hey, sports betting is addicting. Um, it's true. But the other side is like, if there's a game that a lot of people care about and you want to watch it, you want to have fun and buy in and have a good time with your friends, but you don't have like it's not your home team or something, it's just some random thing. Like placing a bet on it makes you care much more. Like yeah, you at least have stake. You're like, I care about the outcome of this game. You know, you could I bet like $5 or $10, right? Like nothing that's meaningful, but just knowing who to root for matters. And so it captures attention in a way that like I think most people sleep on. Um, some people do not, right? Like DraftKings and ESPN Bet and these apps are like, hey, deposit $5, we'll give you $250 for free. Which at face value, like that is an insane promotion. Like I'm definitely gonna take that. Um, but it's because they know the lifetime value of a customer is so high that it's actually worth them. It's worth it for them to pay someone $250 to use their app once because people, you stay on, you realize that it's fun, but you don't know that it's fun until you try it. And so I could see a very similar dynamic coming to play for Kizzy and just doing it on the social media front.
Yeah, I think it's just for us, we're building something new, and it's just so exciting, like exploring some of this design space. But the most like exciting part about this is social media is something that everyone uses. It's on everyone's phone. You, I have yet to meet a person that doesn't consume any social media content at all. And we just need to find people that are excited enough to be able to place bets on it. We need to create an experience that's fun and intuitive. We need to build trust with those customers and users and understand, hey, this is something that you can continue playing and just build that relationship. But every single piece of that has to be carefully designed, built, tested, and for us, there's no shortage of new ideas and work that needs to be done. And so, like every single day, every single week, is just we're trying to make this as good and as fun as possible. And yeah, it's just so much better working on something new, at least from us, than doing some random DeFi protocol or perp stacks. Like it's just we're quite literally inventing something new. Um, and it's just so fun. I can't like echo that enough.
Yeah, I would say my favorite crypto app that's come out in the last year is Fantasy Top. I love it. I think it's super fun. Um, like betting on people's performance, and then like the crowd gets engaged, and like people are tweeting at you. They're like, "Hey, you haven't tweeted in 24 hours. What the hell? The tournament's going on." And like it's funny. It creates good banter, but it creates a new dynamic. And I think that like there are a lot of ideas like that that exist for crypto and they just haven't really been tried yet, but like you can easily hit a vein, right? Like Polymarket, very similar thing. It just absolutely took off. It turns out elections are the Super Bowl of Polymarket. Um, and it sparks really good conversation, which creates controversy, which creates attention, and then you funnel that to user acquisition. Um, maybe how do you think about Fantasy Top? Maybe as like the first mover is someone who's doing it at a pretty high level at this point on they're basically doing crypto Twitter influencer betting in a very different way but similar type of similar vertical maybe and then how like differentiation, how do you guys think that you're different um or similarities, yeah, just like how do you guys tend to think about Fantasy Top from like Kizzy's perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like one Kizzy was we actually built the earliest version of Kizzy to be far closer to a prediction market for social media betting than what it is today. And we had a lot of theses around like why this was going to become huge. But at the core of all of that, it was social media is interesting to a large number of people. They have enough interest to be able to wager money on it. And Friend Tech was the first confirmation, but Fantasy Top was the second, which also fully focused on the financialization aspect of it. And that was like another data point in support of this is something that people want to use, that they want to drive meaningful volume towards. Fantasy Top has done a great job in capturing those users, creating a game that's fun. They have a really strong like community that plays the app every day, that participates. They're, from my perspective, I think generating revenue, or even they might be profitable, which is amazing for any startup within the first year. Now, I think we can all kind of talk about what are some of the downsides or cons of like having a game in their format. But if you just look at what they've accomplished, like it's massive. They took a new concept, they got people that were excited about it, and they're iterating with those customers, which I think for any startup in any space, that's already like a kind of you're already kind of building and going in that direction. I think when we look at social media betting, we want to stay as close to the core as possible. Fantasy Top is a few levels removed from where we see the core of social media betting is. It's a fantasy game with cards and NFTs that we feel adds a layer of complexity and locks them and those games into a specific model. And so, one, Fantasy Top can't scale to, like, let's say YouTube, for example. They technically could, but it would require an entire different design space and game, and like what happens to the people that bought the NFT cards for like you or like whatnot, they tend to devalue them. There's just a lot of considerations there. Second is, I think from our perspective, we actually think the minting of NFTs to give value back over a period of a really long time is inherently negative, because anyone that bought your card or mints packs, they expect a return on that value for the end of time, right? Like the NFT doesn't really go away. And so in that sense, how do you continue driving value towards those assets? And you have to they still have the prize money from the tournaments that they have to pay out. And so if that decreases, you actually tend to devalue everyone's assets. They look at it as a bad thing, and you create this like negative effect around the game and the app that I think they could have avoided had they thought through some of the mechanics a little bit more in detail. They do have this tactics game, which you don't buy an NFT. You just like participate, you pick a deck, and then I think in a week or a day or two, you can score based on which influencers you pick, which I think is great. That's a great iteration to not have NFTs. But the last thing I'll say is that when I look at Fantasy Top today, and this is in no way like coming out negative, but if you look at how many people would participate just from a pure numbers perspective, I think there's maybe a few thousand people in the world that would have interest in participating in fantasy niche crypto Twitter games. When we look at Kizzy and the markets that we are building, you can bet on Donald Trump, MKBHD, Mr. Beast, just humongous influencers that have hundreds of millions of fans. Like Ronaldo hit 1 billion, you know, like fans across all social media platforms. We, in our eyes, see those markets as being far more like comparable to what people are actually consuming every day from a like just generic user perspective. And so I think that's really what the biggest difference with us and Fantasy Top is like we're building social media betting for the masses, and we have crypto Twitter, and crypto is a niche inside of those market segments. And so it's like, yeah, I guess that's really. I'll just stop there. I know it was a lot, but yeah, those are some of the kind of my thoughts on Fantasy Top. They've accomplished a lot. I think like the team's great. They iterate really quickly. It's just when we looked at this design space, we just approached it from a different angle.
Yeah, one thing you kind of have me thinking about here is like, how could Kizzy actually be a growth hack for social creators? Like, you've got like obviously Kai Cenat is huge now, but if you rewind a couple years ago, he was doing all sorts of like random crazy things to like bootstrap an audience, doing like 24-hour streams, like really anything that is going to capture and sustain attention, grow the audience, get people coming back day after day, spread this word of mouth, grow a community around his fan base. And I wonder how could Kizzy come into play for an early creator to really lean into the fact that community members can in essence bet on their growth and success, and how much more engaged do those early community members, those early consumers become. Like I think of this musician that I found on YouTube maybe a month ago who doesn't have a particularly large following, but he's very, very good at guitar. Like I think I saw an Instagram reel of him and then checked out like more of his music on YouTube. And I was like, wow, this guy is super, super underrated. Shout out Steven Wilson Jr. That is a guy that I would definitely long on Kizzy because I'm like, okay, he's really good. He's really unique, but for some reason he hasn't captured like super large scale audience attention. And yeah, I like his music. I want to see him do well just as a bystander. But if I'm like financially invested in his growth and success, then how many more people would I show his music to? How much more engaged would I be on social media? So I'm curious for you, TH, how do you see Kizzy becoming a growth hacking tool? Or, what kind of impact might Kizzy have on communities for the next generation of social media creators who are currently on the come up?
That's a good question. I'll answer that in two ways. One, when it comes to like finding gems or new creators or influencers, we haven't yet explored this design space, but it could be interesting of creating almost like a long option of whether you think X person is gonna reach this much success in like a period of like 1, 3, or 6 months, which is far larger timeframes than the games that we have in the app. The um the kind of, I would say, the biggest like downside on supporting those markets is you actually have to have liquidity powered on, the yes or the no or the up or the down. And so chances are if someone's a small creator, like who's gonna have be enough of a fan or know enough about them to bet against you unless we create a way for us to have like really high payouts. But where I think something that's like a far closer reality for us at this stage is being able to offer a little bit of like revenue share or fee share to the creators and influencers that we have on the platform. And so let's say your the guitar player averages like 100K views a YouTube video, and you could be like a super fan, and you like just as by nature of being a super fan would be willing to participate in the markets on that creator. We would actually be able to offer some sort of revenue share to that creator in exchange for them, like promoting it or being a part of like an ambassador to the Kizzy platform. And so in that sense, we actually add a way for these creators to make money, and they don't have to change their behavior at all. Actually, I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier on the Fantasy Top discussion, but Fantasy Top requires creators to sign up and effectively give permission for Fantasy Top to host the market. They get paid out a certain amount, but you create this relationship between the creator, the person that purchased NFT. For Kizzy, we can actually stand up markets on anyone, but if we want to access a new market or support like up and coming creators, we can actually give them an alternative revenue stream of just being able to earn fees off the markets that we offer on top of that.
Super. Well, most of the audience here is definitely crypto native. I know you're targeting an audience well beyond that, but when it comes down to it, why did you choose to build this on chain?
Yeah, so the decision to build this on chain, we don't really look at it as a decision to build on chain. It was more of like, why should we build this on top of crypto or blockchain rails? And there is like three main reasons. One is we get access to global liquidity and customers just by the nature of being on top of blockchain rails. Like if we were to build this in the Web2 setting, we would have to do operational legwork on setting up banking infrastructure, on and off ramps, banking partners. In each specific region, we have the app available. Like just the work alone for that would be tremendous. Whereas if you're able to build on blockchain rails, you just need a deposit or connect wallet, and you're able to access liquidity on a global scale. And so that's the first reason is just we get accessibility to a lot of customers all at one time without spending much on the operational side. Second is just by nature, crypto customers are the perfect use case to test new gambling and speculation products with. There's a funny kind of saying, and it is true, is like crypto people will buy or bet on anything, all the way from hamster racing to like some random meme coin that they find. And so when it comes to like building something new and novel, you need an excited user base. You want to have people that like to be early and that are motivated for, trying new products. This creates the perfect niche to like start building Kizzy out of. The third, and this is something that's a little bit more nascent, but you need liquidity to power and really scale applications that provide odds and bets to other players. And so we're actually able to bootstrap and scale a lot of the liquidity that would be underlying on the Kizzy application through like DeFi adjacent products. And so think of like JLP and Jupiter in their pool, or GMX, like the way that they run the liquidations and liquidity on the market is provided by other people that earn a yield off doing that. And so blockchain allows us to actually have that liquidity powering our application and scale that to 1 million, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of users if we ever get to that stage. Um, those unlocks are only uniquely enabled by building on top of blockchain rails. And this doesn't even get into the conversation of security, transparency, instant payouts, and whatnot, which all come with just building on top. But if I was to kind of have three main reasons, those would be the three.
Yeah, super. I mean, it's clear that like this is a case where blockchain meaningfully improves the product, and that's always really exciting at the end of the day. I know a lot of the community is going to be really excited to test out Kizzy, to get involved. So would love to give them some alpha, especially as it's pretty early stages here. Where, when, and how can the community get involved with Kizzy?
Yeah, so I'm not sure when this podcast will be released. I think probably before testnet. But we have two main community channels: a Telegram and Discord. The Telegram, we have a few hundred users testing the app and giving feedback ahead of the Monad testnet launch. However, we just launched our Discord like a week back, and we're onboarding a new group of testers for the app, probably ahead of Monad's testnet launch as well. And so, if you want to be a part of the testing phase for that, like I said, I'm not sure when this podcast will go live, but if you watch the podcast, just go to Discord and open a ticket, and then we'll give a limited amount of roles to people that end up screenshotting the podcast that they watched it. So that's a great way to get involved. If not, just follow our socials, and you can um, we can let you know when the app's live.
So, TH, we have a final question we ask every guest that comes on the pipeline. It was inspired by Kobe and Ledger. Shout out the GOATs. But it is the final alpha. And so, final alpha, I typically ramble for a little bit so you can try to think of something. It is just one last thought that you think will leave a lasting impression on any of the viewers. It could be a piece of wisdom that you've had from building Kizzy or existing in crypto. It could be not crypto related whatsoever. It could be something that your mother told you when you were a kid and it always stuck with you and you think it's true. It could be something that you have high conviction in, you think is real, that most people disagree with you on. It could quite literally be anything that you want to leave as kind of your final statement to the audience here. Anything health, wealth, happiness related is typically encouraged, but absolutely not mandated. Anything that you think is kind of a good closing word for the episode today. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the floor. I'll say this, and I think this has stuck with me, and it's been something that I've kind of continued to try to do. But for us, and I think we're all around the same age, you've been given this blueprint of life of do well in school, go to college, get a job, get married, have a house, and then kind of live that life. That life's not for everyone. I actually think it's not for a majority of people, but you tend to just put yourself in this sort of path because everyone else is doing it. I very early on just didn't have the heart in me to continue that. And so started looking for options of like what other thing exists. Startups and entrepreneur journey is great. However, in most parts of the world, it's super hard to get started or have the information you need to actually build something. In the world of AI, crypto, and like access to funding of people just wanting to support people globally, it's never been easier to go out and just try something that you want to do. And so there's 100,000 reasons to say no, but there's only one to say yes. And so if you have an idea, or if you're not happy or currently in a like kind of zone where you're feeling good about your life or life goals, just try different things, figure out what you love to do. I quit my job. It was a great job 2 years ago to go full time in Web3, and it was the hardest yet best decision I've ever made. This last year, I moved countries just on a whim to be closer to my team. And every single time a decision feels so impossible and hard, it always ends up being like a much better decision than had I not chosen to do that. And so if there's just one thing that I've learned is if you have an inkling or like kind of feeling of wanting to do something, just go and try. The worst that can be happen is you can start when you're where you left off, but if you don't do it, it's going to be in the back of your mind for the rest of your life, and you're never going to forget that. So that's my advice: is just go out and try it. You're never going to know what happens.
Explore the corners of the world, explore the corners of your mind and your mindset. See if anything sticks with you. And then if it does, you will thank yourself for the rest of your life. To paraphrase the wise words of TH. Appreciate you coming on today, man.
Thank you. It was a pleasure chatting with you all. Thanks for all the great questions and conversation.
Beauty.
Absolutely.
TH, Kizzy, awesome stuff. Really excited for everything in the pipeline. Trademark, no pun intended. We'll have to run this back soon once the app is live. So thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you on the timeline.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting.